Hello to everyone watching at home. My name is Laura Day. I'm with St.Ation, and today I'm joined by Anna-Ruth, hoping to become your next Director of Wellbeing. In the next 10-15 minutes, I'll be asking Anna-Ruth a few questions about their manifesto and the person behind it to help you decide who to vote for later this week. So with introductions over, let's get started with some questions about your manifesto. So first of all, we can't ignore it. COVID has affected everything in our lives, but how has it affected your manifesto?
Yeah, I think definitely preparing a manifesto was difficult with COVID because probably when I first started thinking about running, you kind of assume that it will probably be over by then. But I think now it's maybe more reasonable to assume that, there will be people who have travel difficulties and self-isolating, and all of those kind of things, even with like vaccination in the UK. So I think I really wanted to focus on both ensuring that the support that's available now during COVID is continues and is expanded upon, but also looking at the support that's available coming out of COVID, because I think what's really important to me is to recognize that there are people who have not had in-person teaching for 2 years. And in-person teaching and the different formats and the different assessments and things that people do are going to be much more difficult for people. So that academic support, whether it is helping people catch up with things that they missed, or providing some kind of leniency in things like extensions and things as well, is incredibly important. And then also, COVID has been an incredibly stressful and difficult time. Lots of people have been perhaps lonely for quite a long time or experiencing bereavement and things like health anxiety. So I really want to look at, working with particularly the chaplaincy, but also student services, because the chaplaincy has run these kind of projects before, setting up, discussion groups and things for bereavement as an issue that people have experienced, and also looking at providing more activity packs and things for people who are self-isolating, and also working with peer support to ensure that they can support students who might be experiencing social isolation, given that people have had so much difficulty making friends, particularly this year, and particularly first years as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of COVID, first years have had an incredibly challenging start to their university careers with the lack of in-person tuition and the lack of opportunities to network, which is obviously a major part of university. So what additional support would you try to put in place specifically for first years to help them adjust to life at St. Andrews?
Yeah, so I think peer support is a really important thing. Fantastic project. They'll support students, whether it's just they want to go for a chat and a coffee and things and talk about stuff, or whether they want help going to society events and things like that. So I think that's really important. I also think working with the other SABs to ensure that things like society events and Give It a Goes are plentiful and approachable, and easy for people to access, kind of coming out of that isolation, is really important. And then looking at, I guess this is maybe an issue that very specifically affects first years, things like Raisin and May Dip that people would normally have taken part in their first year but haven't had the opportunity to. I think it's really important. It's fantastic to see that there's still going to be some things going on online, but it's really important to look at how that tradition can be expanded upon for next year, to ensure that all the people, well, as many as possible of the people who missed out this year, obviously some people will have left, will be able to take part in it next year, and that it will be safe and enjoyable for them to do so, and not too busy and things like that.
That's great. When I was going through your manifesto, I was noticing some of your policies, and one of them involves advertising support to students during matriculation. Things like student services, you put a lot of emphasis on prevention rather than, before a crisis, rather than having to respond to it. So how would, in terms of advertising support during matriculation, how would that go further than the signposting procedures which are already in place?
Yeah, so I think, I think that I see my policy around advertising support during matriculation kind of going hand in hand with improving the student services website. Definitely my experience as disability officer has been that so many students, if not like the majority of students, don't know about every service that's available in the university to support them, particularly the kind of services that support you before you reach a crisis, as opposed to once you've reached a crisis. So people are maybe quite aware that Student Services offers counselling, but not that they offer money advice, or not that peer support exists. Or that you can reach out to the disability team, before you have a diagnosis, or if you're seeking a diagnosis as well, to discuss your adjustments, and things like that. And that is why often students reach that crisis point. And so I think it's really important that students start university with this kind of baser knowledge of, here's all of the services that are available to you. Not just that Student Services exists and I can signpost you there when you come to me and say everything's terrible, but that you're like, hey, in week 2, when I start to realize that I'm a little bit lonely and maybe things haven't gone as well as I thought they were going to go, I can reach out to peer support and start working with them for going to events and things like that. And have a knowledge of all of those different services that are available so that students can do that more quickly. And then also that when people are in a crisis, it's much easier for them to find out exactly where it is they need to go, what phone number they need to phone, or email address they need to email, how they book an appointment, who they're booking it with, and making all of those processes much easier is just incredibly important. And I think one of the things I definitely recognized was how difficult it is for students to do, and to some extent, if you look at the other candidates' manifestos, I think they reflect that as well, and in some cases reflect, there are other manifestos that mention expanding certain services like confidence coaching, or out of hours healthcare, and those things actually exist. But I think it's evidence then that people don't know that they exist, and people can't find them, and that they need to be better advertised and easier to find.
That's great. You mentioned a little bit about your experience, which is outlined on your manifesto. So how does your experience on the Disabled Students Network and your role as Equity Officer for the Scottish Students Debating Council prepare you for the position of Director of Wellbeing?
Yeah, so as Disability Officer, I founded and chaired the Disabled Students Network this year. So I think that means that I have, lots of experience working with student representatives across the equality and wellbeing initiatives that the Director of Wellbeing works with. I'm very familiar with how, the DSN and BAME and Saints LGBT Plus and Wellbeing Subcommittee and Lifers and things, how they all work, and the kind of things that they need as well, like, implementing the BAME action plan, and the pronoun work and the work for trans and non-binary students that Saints LGBT Plus is doing. So I think that kind of familiarity is really important, that it's not all new. And so we'll be able to start from a good level to move forward. I've also worked with Student Services on pursuing feedback with them, and worked on equality initiatives and things as well, that I think is, incredible experience for making sure that we can get some of the changes in student services and things that I talk about done. In terms of with the Scottish Students Debating Council, so I oversaw the equity officers in every debate society in Scotland. So equity officers are what debate societies call their welfare or their wellbeing officers, like kind of sports clubs have. And I think that one of the things that I noticed is that, it is fantastic that we see societies taking on a kind of greater role in wellbeing and in signposting, and that kind of thing, bystander intervention. But it's actually really terrible that our solution to it is often to put it on one person. And I think that's why when I talk about training for societies in dealing with harassment and reporting mechanisms, and appropriate signposting and things like that, that's why I talk about training society committees, and training everyone and the entire student community as well, and advertising these things to the entire student community, so that all of that stress and pressure and difficulty that can come with being the person that people go to when you're in crisis, isn't all put on one single individual. Because I know that I've experienced that makes those societies really terrible to be in. It makes you kind of stop finding it fun, because you're just constantly the person that's the sober person, and all of those kind of things that aren't always enjoyable. So I think that gives me a kind of really good knowledge of how training societies and things would work, and the issues that come with putting too much pressure on them and not giving them enough support.
Okay, fabulous. So now that we've delved a little bit deeper into your manifesto, it's time to find out a little bit more about you, the person behind the policies. So first of all, what inspired you to run for Director of Wellbeing?
Yeah, so obviously I've been disability officer for the past year, and I have really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed working specifically on some of the equality initiatives I've worked on, and working on pursuing feedback with student services. And I think I've also built up a lot of experience and knowledge and ideas, things that I really wanted to see changed, more self-help resources, better access to information about the services that are available to you, tackling issues like hate crime and discrimination that I think the union has kind of left untouched for far too long. And it's those kind of things that I really wanted to see change. I don't just want to keep doing what other people are doing. I want to see a change in the way that the Director of Wellbeing operates. We've never had a Director of Wellbeing who sat on Equal Opportunities Committee before. We've never had a Director of Wellbeing then that's had the experience and the focus on equality issues and things like hate crime and things like that. And that's something I really want to see the union change. That's why I founded the DSN. And that's, I think, why I want to be Director of Wellbeing, is that I want to take that forward. And I want to take that forward and support the other student groups like BAME and Saints LGBT+ and things like that, with the knowledge that I built up as disability officer, and working with the DSN to get the changes that they want as well. And that's something that I'm really passionate about.
Okay, great. So we're coming to the end of the interview, but there is just time for one more question. What is your best memory from your time at St. Andrews?
Ooh, let's see. I mean, I think there's a few different ones. When I went to DRA Ball in my first year, I just thought that was really fun. I don't really have any particular memory from that other than I just remember it being really fun. Obviously, I've done debating, and I think some of the public debates that I went to in my first year, it just was really cool. I just felt really St. Andrews, everyone's got the gown and all that kind of thing, and I always just thought that was really cool. And some of my memories of speaking in public debates as well, it's something that I really enjoy. And it's really cool to stand up in Lord Parliament Hall behind the little podium and all that kind of thing.
Okay, so in the final minute, I'd like to give you the opportunity to say something to everybody watching at home right now. Why should they vote Anna-Ruth for Director of Wellbeing?
Yeah, I think I've got experience, I think I've got passion, and I think that I cover the issues comprehensively. I want to tackle the big things we've recognised this year: inequality and discrimination, sexual violence, the lack of awareness of the support available, and the need to improve the support services that are available. And even elections, actually. We're probably all thinking about elections now, and I've got experience there too, and ideas there too. And I'm really, really committed to being a good Director of Wellbeing, and I hope that you'll consider voting for me.
And with that, I'd like to thank Anna-Ruth very much for participating in this interview. I wish you the very best of luck with your campaign. Join me next time as I talk all things election with Maisie McDavid. Hope to see you there. Bye.